apologies for this. So, in fact, this ties to this question of availability of data. So, I started my work in GIS, but quickly became involved in conflict area, and trying to understand what people experience during conflict, how it affects them in their daily lives, from health, public health, mental health questions, trust, cohesion, how it affects them in their daily lives and what they want to see happen in the future. Now, the reason I mention all this is because that's the kind of data that doesn't exist out there. You're probably very familiar or used to find the kind of demographic and health surveys data and map data that are available that are standard poverty, health kind of data. But when it comes to peace, security, conflict places, then we don't have that kind of data. And the fact is that what we quickly realized is, great, now we can collect the data, we can use traditional means of collecting the information. It takes us anywhere between 6 months to 2 years between data entry, translation, analysis, report writing. In other words, it's completely useless by the time you actually get the information out there. That's when we started developing a platform that's now called KoBoToolbox. What I'll talk about is mainly that platform, and then I'll make the link with the geography component. But the platform is a little bit different than the tool we've just seen. It's really meant, think of it as a survey monkey on steroids kind of thing, or a way just of replacing your standard paper-based data collection with a digital way of doing things, one that works offline so that when you don't have connectivity, it functions, one that includes various ways of integrating multiple streams of data, of course from GPS coordinates all the way to pictures, voice, automated skip patterns so that you no longer have those mistakes of asking a man whether he's pregnant or not, because that's probably not a relevant question. So you can make all these part of the platform. So that's what I'll talk a little bit. But instead of me talking, there's a video for that. So let me play the video first, and then I'll talk about it a little more.
Data collection and management just became easier with KoBoToolbox, a set of tools created by field researchers for field researchers. KoBoToolbox produces better quality data through its unique recording functions, combining the process of collecting and recording data. Using KoBoToolbox is much faster and more efficient than recording responses by hand alone. It reduces errors and brings together qualitative, quantitative, and multimedia data. KoBoToolbox is open source and free for everyone to use. KoBoToolbox was developed by faculty and a research team now based at the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and the Brigham and Women's Hospital to support humanitarian operations globally. Our goal was to simplify data collection in the most demanding setting. Now, KoBoToolbox is being used in every major humanitarian disaster. Our users work around the world in humanitarian emergencies, research, peacekeeping, and economic development. At KoBoToolbox, we know how difficult data collection can be in the field. Unreliable electricity, bad internet connections, security and logistical problems, and lack of trained staff can be huge challenges to collecting data quickly and reliably. For that reason, we've built easy-to-use tools that allow you to create and share forms with complex validation rules and skip logic, collect the data both online and offline, monitor the progress of data collection without being on site, and perform basic analyses and mapping functions. In addition, our new features include a question library that allows you to archive, search, and share questions previously developed, and a multi-level sharing capability that allows you to share forms, the question library, and collected data. It's simple to get started with building your forms and collecting data with KoBoToolbox. You do not require an internet connection whilst you're collecting data. The information you enter is stored offline and can then be synced whenever your devices are back online. Why not create an account today and see how KoBoToolbox can transform your field data collection and management?
Okay, so, There are a number of solutions out there that propose these kind of services, and I'm not here to say we're the best ones. I think we're one of the good ones, and there are a number of features that I think are quite unique. I think one of the elements for us is that we're not just looking at the data collection platform. We're really looking at the ecosystem. So looking not just at the data side, but the community side and the training side. So for example, we have now launched a training site that, for example, train humanitarians on how to do humanitarian needs assessment. It's becoming so easy to do surveys, to collect data, that it's actually very easy to collect bad surveys, to collect bad data. So there's also the need to kind of build the capacity and build the understanding and knowledge on how to do these kind of surveys and data collection. Now, KoBoToolbox, as you've seen, has primarily a humanitarian focus. My background was looking at peace building and conflict data, but about 2 years ago, we partnered with the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs to develop this platform and really tailor our use case to the needs of humanitarian actors. What that means, again, is some of the requirements on how it works offline, but also make sure that everything is extremely simple. And you've seen very briefly on the interface, you don't need any kind of coding skills. You don't need to write any kind of line. You can actually just click import, drag questions, move question. I'll show it in a minute, to create actually fairly complex forms. Now, the form and the data collection itself is only the first part of what we are trying to achieve. This is, in the end, a fairly technical steps, and as I said, there are other solutions. But the ultimate goal is really more about data sharing, standardization. The idea is that once actors start to use, at very least, common standards, common platforms, we use Xforms compatible systems. So there are a number of systems that works with the same type of form minus minor adjustments. But the main point is that it makes it simpler to start sharing your own forms. Now, the library that was just introduced, and there's a video for that, I'll impose a second one. The library is actually a key part, because if you have ever collected data, you very well know that you will receive one assessment in Excel form, another one in PDF, another one in Word, and you start mashing up those things and looking at those resources. And you ask, what is your gender? And you coded 0 for men and 1 for women. But this other survey that used the same question actually coded 0 for men and 1 for women. And what that means is now you cannot put your data together. You cannot merge them easily. Those are very simple and kind of silly things, but that's where we are in the humanitarian field of data collection and pretty much across the world. And so the idea of the library, which I'll briefly show, is to move towards a standardization. So you can very easily, if you reuse the same question, you can create your own library. So you just enter them once, and if you use them in other surveys, you just save them in your library and you can query it. You can query rich text, so I want just any question that mentioned chairs, or you can tag your questions. And the use case for us was, there is an earthquake tomorrow, you need to go and do a water and sanitation assessment. Well, that's what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to enter earthquake, water, sanitation, and it would suggest for you all of the questions that you should be asking. It's not imposing, it's not a template, it's not saying this is your assessment, because that doesn't work. It's been tried for many years, people have tried templates, standards, that just doesn't work. But by suggesting the questions, by making it a search, then people can start using the question, and if they don't like it, they can still change it. They can still take something else. But at least we're moving towards a standardization by making it available. Now, libraries are not just your own, you can actually share it, and that means we have institutional libraries. And one of the big development is to get on board those partners to build those standardized libraries, so that if I need to do a food security assessment, instead of just looking around, well, why don't I go to the World Food Program, maybe USAID, or a couple of sources that would have their library that would be their standard, validated question libraries. And then I can start importing and using them, and so making it simple to build now a form that has some standards built in it. Now, once I have those standards built in it, it makes it simpler down the line to share the data. But before we go even to sharing the data, it makes it simpler to start documenting and creating metadata. What fields do we have in here? And really encouraging, through the form builder, that's the next step for us, to not just collecting the data and create a form, but actually documenting what are you doing? Where are you going to do it? How are you going to collect the data? And for those of us who have a geographic background, we're all very familiar with the metadata and the need to document your projections and so on, which we miss all the time, and it's so frustrating. And how often do you get data and you have absolutely no idea where they come from? Sure, it's great It's interesting, but you have no ability to look at it. So let me impose that quick video because I think it's interesting and illustrates better.
Obtaining the right information usually depends on asking the right questions. KoBoToolbox now features the Kobo question library, which makes it simple to write, store, and share questions electronically in ready-to-use format, from humanitarian needs assessments to healthcare surveys and human rights monitoring tools. Almost every assessment scenario is based on a set of standardized indicators and scales, which should enable a straightforward comparison of results. However, until now, there's not been an easy way to store validated questions and measures and then share them with other surveys or users. The Kobo question library, integrated with the form builder within KoBoToolbox, now makes this possible. Users can develop and share sets of questions, then easily import them into new data collection instruments. Here's how it works. The Kobo question library can be used as a starting point for a new form, rather than building one from scratch. Use the search tool to quickly discover questions specific to your particular needs. These could be questions you saved earlier, or entire collections of questions shared by other users. All library questions can have relevant search tags for easy identification. Tags can be filtered to instantly identify suitable questions or question blocks, which are groups of questions that are usually asked together. Blocks are particularly useful because they already contain the skip logic conditions required and make possible rapid deployment of complex question sequences. They also allow differing scales and indices to be organized together more easily. You can simply drag and drop the required questions and question blocks into your new form, and then customize them if needed, without affecting the original library versions. The form is now ready to be tested, piloted and deployed, the whole task potentially taking only a matter of minutes. The Kobo question library is
I'll stop it there because it shows you the basic function. You see that it's not the final version of the video, but this is where we stand. And so that's the idea of this library and function. Now, the reason I'm presenting all this is that this is very, very active development. We're fully open source and free, but the way we're functioning is really through grants and gifts that allows us the development along feature requests from humanitarian actors. One of the most active one after this is going to be completed deals with mapping. I can't show it on this computer, unfortunately, but we are looking at how can we better integrate maps into the different type of questions that we are supporting. Right now, you can, of course, call GPS. You can take pictures, as I mentioned. You can scan barcodes. You can do a number of things. But the things that we cannot handle so well, we can do it, but it's not perfect yet, would be visualizing a map and at least draw on the map. I think tomorrow you will hear about walking papers. Well, it's the same idea, except instead of having to write it down and scan it, then it's directly on your tablet and you're able to do that. Even better, imagine you have a digitized layer of the city. You've got the city of Kathmandu that has been fully digitized. Every building has its own shape. There is an earthquake there. You can now go around and start clicking on the buildings, and then every time you click on a building or even select an area, it's telling you, asking you a few questions, and you can say, okay, this building is damaged, but it still functions. Or this building is damaged beyond functioning. Or this building is not damaged and still functioning. That's key when we talk about critical infrastructure, like healthcare, for example. Hospitals, being able to very rapidly know where are those hospitals, are they functioning, partly functioning, not functioning at all, for example. On the analysis side, we are supporting, of course, basic display of the GPS coordinates you collected, and of course you can visualize that based on any of the indicators that are associated with those coordinates. I'm sorry to display this. Well, actually, no, you know what? I'm going to open it quickly here. My typing is frustrating frustratingly slow, I apologize. Especially on this computer. Now, this is the substantive side of the research. This is why we created KoBo, and so now it's kind of taken not a second side, but KoBo is certainly, KoBoToolbox is certainly the strongest part of it. Let me open, I don't know, why don't we open Liberia? This is a little slightly older. Sorry, what I meant was to open the map. Our goal is to make it simple to move from your survey results to a very simple interactive map that allows you to easily navigate through all of the indicators that you collected and visualize them on a map. Now, of course, on this display, it's not perfect, but you can quickly see the indicators you collected. And of course, the mapping, and the nice part is once the map is loaded, I mean, you saw fairly quickly it loads. We're actually working to improve that so that even in fairly low connected environment, you will be able to do this very quickly. And once the map is loaded, then you can navigate from indicators to indicators. How do we make this simpler? That's our challenge now, so that it works across surveys. All you have to do is match the survey you made to the administrative areas where you work. Not that simple in terms of analysis, but creating those maps is a huge advantage because now you allow anyone to not just look at your report in the PDF side, but actually to start and looking and make their own findings around what they see visually and geographically from the data. And I've got some, it's been a while since I looked at the Liberia data. On Burundi, we did one, and there are some very strong visual hypotheses you can make just by looking at the data this way. So, just showing again KoBoToolbox. So this is the website, and in order to log in, it's all free and hosted solution. Right now, we have about 4,000 institutional users. It's about 20,000 users that build forms and over 100,000 people who are actually collecting data in the field. On a monthly basis, we get about 300,000 submissions on average per month, mostly coming from crises. So Nepal, Syria, Ebola crisis was also a big spike from West Africa. So once you sign in, we're in the middle of releasing a new version. So we'll see what happens. Oh. Complicated password takes time to enter. I hope I didn't forget it. Actually, I think I forgot it. So I opened it here. I can, let me try one more. This is embarrassing. I don't know my own password. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I'm really sorry about that, but you saw it in the video. Let me see if it's gonna go here. Try one last time. No. Okay, it's not gonna go in, I'm sorry. You saw it in the video. Basically, you've got a simple interface to build the questionnaire, and what it is very much intuitive, and you can write in question, click the plus, and then you can select the type of question you're adding, text, numbers, video, pictures, as I showed. And then you go in the settings of those questions, and you can set pretty much any condition in terms of skipping patterns. So whether this question is displayed based on the previous answers, you can set validation rules. In other words, how old are you? I don't want this answer to be more than 150 or something like that. We always have these kind of mistakes. You can set calculation. So for example, you want to make sure that the household size is larger or equal to the number of children plus the number of adults. These kind of things you can do easily, and it sounds like not much, but in terms of validation and cleanliness of the data, it's a huge improvement. When we started, our goal, as I mentioned, was speed. was about being able to take out this entire process of data entry and do it in the field so that we were able to analyze the data immediately. Well, the biggest gain, of course, the speed is there, but the biggest gain is in the data quality and also in the type and multiple streams of data we're able to collect at the same time. So geography is an important feature both in the analysis, both in terms of where we are going to go. But if there are any idea or thoughts or partners you think you should look at, then of course we're more than happy to explore and continue building this platform. So thank you. Any questions? We have time. No, there was.
I was, since I couldn't see all the functionality, sounds like you're still in the building process, right? So what about the mapping aspects? Are they still being developed?
So what's already available, so the platform is live and works. It's just that I'm silly enough, and anyway, it's on my computer. But the platform is live. We've been doing incremental improvements, so we release new feature on a nearly continuous basis, as opposed to kind of keep it all and then do one big release. We keep improving things, so that's why you may see at times things that seems a little inconsistent. It's just that it's work in progress. What's available right now in public is a simple display of, if you have GPS coordinates in your form, you'll be able to see where you collected the data. And you'll be able to display that based on, for example, the gender of the interviewer or any of the attributes that is in your questionnaire, you'll be able to display the points that way. What is not public yet, and we have a model working, is the one dealing with the aggregates, the aggregation of your data, and then the display by geographic areas. Now, that requires you typically to have a sample that's large enough to make it a valid aggregation. We don't want to encourage people to make bad maps, but that's where we have a number of visitations, so that brings in weighting potentially. And so the most likely is that we're going to work on an import feature, so you will have to export your data. We support about 7 types of data formats: CSV, Excel. You can download the data, no problem. Analyze it and then re-import that for the mapping, the interactive mapping. Now the platform has 2 hosted solutions. One they are both completely free, but one that's purely for humanitarian actors, that's hosted by OCHA, and one that's hosted by us that is more general purpose. But we also have a platform that UNHCR is managing, one that MSF is managing. So there's a number of platforms out there, and anyone pretty much can download the code and create their own platform, especially if you have strong requirements around data security, for example. Yep.
Yes, when it comes to mapping, I think we're all a little bit still confused as to how this integrates map functionality. But I would think that at the very least, there would be a question grouping about location at the very beginning of your options, where you could either put in coordinates or some other coding system for place names or drop-down menus. Or so how do you, I mean, one of the most important things about the survey monkey on steroids is precise locational information.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear how you get to step 1 in your process.
So you've got multiple ways of doing it, but the simplest one is, of course, include a GPS question in your survey. In other words, take the GPS coordinates of where you're collecting the data.
So that should be the very first prompt you get when you open your...
But you build the form the way you want. Some people don't want to collect the GPS coordinates because they think it's an identifiable information. So not every survey needs to have a GPS question, but that option is there. And so if you collected it, then that information is handled by the platform, and you will be able to automatically, I can't show it, but in the interface where you have your projects, in your project you have the summary, you have how many forms were submitted. You can download your data, but you can also visualize the map. And when you visualize the map, what it does is visualize for you all the GPS coordinates that you collected. And so you can see the spread of where those points were captured. And again, you can change the display by attributes. So instead of just having a general display, you can display by name of the interviewers or by sex of the respondents. Whatever items or question was in your form, you can display those points that way. I'm happy to show it offline after on the computer. So that works. Now the second way, of course, is, and that's where the libraries are important, is libraries of administrative areas. We all know that there is no standardization, that how spelling in one database is different than on the other one. But if we can agree and use a standard name and place database or library of questions, then we go towards that standardization. The way the map that I just showed, the geographic map, works is that in your form, at the beginning you ask, okay, what country are you in? What province are you in? What sub-district are you in? Whichever the area you want to represent is, you provide that information. And then there is a matching between the geographic layer that we have and that information you have, and we can represent the aggregate of those two together.
So do they use P codes?
We don't use P code so far, but it's possible. It would be probably a much better way of doing it than what we've been using, which is the standard public source on the GAD, the global administrative data set. So we basically use that as our standards. But you can also manually match it. So for example, say you've got 20 districts and you've got 17 of them that match with your administrative layer. The 3 others that might be a spelling mistake or something like that, you can actually manually match them.
Thank you.
Yep.
My question is about the questions. When you post them into your library, are you putting them into the public domain?
You don't have to, but so you can have your own library of the questions you liked and so on, but we would like to encourage people to start putting their own libraries in the public domain. And so one of the things that is not available yet, but I will be building, is an interface where all the public libraries are available for downloads. And not only that, but you will be able to rank them. In other words, you know what, I like the UNICEF nutrition library, I don't like the WHO nutrition library. And so as people start using those libraries, what you're going to have is more and more standardization. And so maybe, I mean, in this case, I hope nobody's from WHO here. What's going to happen is it's going to be, best library is going to survive. And so they are going to become more and more useful. Now, the large organizations will likely have the resource to create their libraries. But then for the small NGOs, instead of having to think and scratch their head, what do I want to use? They can start downloading and using these libraries, adapting them the way they need to. But that's where we see the next steps in terms of standardization. And again, make it simpler, if not to share the data, at least to share metadata. And I know that you collected those nutrition questions because I've got the metadata of your form, so I know exactly what type of questions you ask.
And what about multi-language support?
So multi-language support is there. I did mention a couple of things. One is that the platform runs for the data collection through an Android app, but it also works through a web interface. So you can work across any kind of platform. On the Android app, as long as the language is supported on the tablet, it's supported. And so you can support multiple languages. You can actually switch from one language to the other live during the form. Most scripts are supported. Don't ask me about the most unique or things, but Arabic, for example, or Sanskrit. I mean, all the common scripts are supported. The platform itself is already available in English, of course. I can't show it. It's available in English. The form builder is available in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic at this point, and we hope to keep adding translations as well. And the training that we're building so far in English, but we'll have to have multiple languages.
And what about the wording of the actual questions? I'll give you an example. My local school board just banned Google Translate because of all the faux pas that it puts into school board documents.
So I should have said, the translation is not automatic. You have to input your own translation in the system. So you have to enter your own translation. It won't translate automatically for you. But again, if you use the library, then those questions could have the most common language already included, so that when you download the question, you already have it in, say, the standard UN language, French, Arabic, English, of course, maybe German, whatever it is.
You kind of answered my original question. My question was about the library as well, where a lot of questions and similar questions could go into the library, and it would be confusing without the rating system or ranking system like you talked about, to help popularize the most common types of questions. I think that was going to be my question, but I think you already answered it. That's a very important piece, I think, to encourage folks to use a standard question. But a follow-up, just to kind of combine the two presentations, is there an ability to take your information, which it seems like KoBoToolbox is a good way to get local data in areas that aren't the United States. Is there a way to interface with CartoDB or other mapping sites that may be further down the road?
From a purely technical perspective, there's a full documented API, we're still improving, but so from a technical perspective, it's pretty easy. Where we are always concerned is data control, data quality, aggregation. So for example, sure, you can take the data and display it, but you didn't clean it, and it turns out that one of your value was completely out of range. And so, you know, the detection and the work around the cleaning of the data and flagging when you have outliers is something we need to improve so that people don't feel like they can just click a button, have the report and have the map and their work is done. There's still important steps in terms of looking at the individual data, making sure it's clean. And then the second part on the analysis especially is whenever you do surveys or other forms of data collection, you need to weight your results and how far do you go into the analysis. We've been working on integrating our modules in some of the forthcoming release and analysis, but how much can you truly automate? That's a critical one and a difficult one we've been struggling with. So again, if there are ideas or people who have been struggling or found a solution to that, I would be very keen to hear about it, because again, it's that challenge, okay, you collected the data, you click, and then now you see something, but it really doesn't represent reality. What it does is just an analysis of uncleaned, unweighted data, and so that's risky at the same time. So not a perfect answer. Just on the library, just to add also is, I do it all the time, you know. Oh, I want to use a Likert scale, so what's the one that goes from not at all to extremely? And then I have to look at it again, and then you see that there's 10 different ones and things like that. So we shouldn't have to do that, really. And so that's the idea also behind this, is you'll be able to have all these common kind of answers and scales automatically done. And in the library as well, you have, I think it was mentioned in the video, you will have blocks of questions, so things that belong together. So if you have, I do a lot on psychosocial trauma, so if you have a scale that's meant to measure a specific trauma, it really makes no sense to take one question out of that scale, right? Because then you throw off the scale, then your entire measurement is useless. So that would be the kind of thing that you would get a warning. This question is part of a group. If you delete it, it's not going to be consistent or so on.
You mentioned I think the ability to keep your data, or is it your data and your questions are both private? Is that right? When you create a form or when you upload entries, is that?
So by default, on a hosted solution, the data is your data, right? I mean, so there's no access or no use of your data. They are your private data. In fact, right now, we do not have a system that would allow you to make the data public. But that's something, as I said before, that's something we'd like to support in the future, and especially sharing metadata. But that's the vision in the future. The library part is the one where you can actually create your library, save your questions, and then you can export it. And right now, what you have to do is export it and send it to someone or so on. But in the future, what we'd like to do is you just have to check a mark, and then automatically it would synchronize it to the central library server, if you like, and then you can go there and download and look at anybody's library that's public. In very much the same way that some geographic data are available on these kind of services. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry about the trouble.